all the way from UK via Skype is Dr. Brian Faulkner. He owns a consultation business called The Colorful Consultancy, and he has this unique philosophy on how to deal with people, how to deal with the finances, and how to get great clinical resolution to your cases. And because of his psychology degree, it takes that unique flow. And as everyone knows, no matter what you do in life, it's always about people. And with that, Brian, I'll let you continue our discussion.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting what you say, Michael, about people. I mean, I call veterinary as a people job. It's a people business. It's people who just happen to own animals.
Yeah.
And I say, dentistry is a people business. It's people who just happen to have teeth. And I talk about, every job's a people business. So one of the things what I was getting called more and more as part of my consultation coaching, I literally come in, sit in a consultation room quietly in the corner and coach people. And one of the things I noticed was the people who seemed to be most stressed, most anxious, or maybe I was called to help with most, were between 2 and 4 years graduation. And I noticed they were the most vulnerable. They were the ones, to be honest, that actually when I started coaching very, very gently, they were the ones that would have the tears in their eyes and the lip would wobble, and they would actually almost break down in front of you in a one-on-one scenario. And really vulnerable folk. And I was wondering, why is this? What's going on? And to the point where I have identified this phenomenon, if you like, I call it the 3-year wobble. And what I mean by that is, as I say, it's a 2 to 4, classically around the 3-year stage where they seem particularly vulnerable. And I wondered why was that? Because I would have guessed straight off the bat, that it would have been, the first year perhaps. I would have thought that would have been our most vulnerable stage. And what I realize, of course, is in the first year, there's a perception that, if you like, we know nothing. I mean, there's lots to learn. We're happy to ask and happy to be told. Personally, there's no bother with that. There's no shame in being redirected in a case. And second year, it's quite similar. We're still happy to ask for advice with no sense of embarrassment or shame. And we're also happy to be redirected if it's appropriate. And what happens around the third year, I see, is that there's this sort of overwhelming sort of feeling from everyone, be it employers, be it the individual vets themselves, is that they end up thinking, I think I should have got this by now. Feel I should have got this by now. And when you go into what this is, I thought I should have been able to take a history, perform an exam, and relatively confidently pronounce what's going on with that patient. And there's still that doubt, because I referred to in the early segment that we have that doubt of that no symptoms are pathognomonic for me of medical causes. There's no one cough, sneeze, vomit, limb scratch, lump. There's always an alternative, and that therefore creates an inherent doubt. But at this point, around 3 years, what I find with the vets that I'm working with is they're struggling with this fog of uncertainty. They're not perhaps aware that everyone else is doing it as well. Maybe people don't talk about this because perhaps they maybe don't want to share that they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So they do one thing. The first theory or the first resolution strategy they do is they say, maybe I'm not very confident because I don't know enough. So we go all out and we learn a bunch of courses. We go and do all the CPD there is, and perhaps, I don't know what you call them in the US, but in the UK we do certificates. We do postgraduate certificates as our basic launching pad into a slightly developed CPD or qualification. And we do the certificates and we get all the education and we go back in the room or we continue on. And actually here we find, I'm no more confident. I know enough a little bit more about these particular diseases, but I'm still not able to take a history, do an exam, and be confident about what's going on. So without realizing that doubt is inherent, the second conclusion they reach, and this is when I get them at 3 to 4 years, is the second conclusion reached, well, I've done that CPD, I've learned all the knowledge, I still don't feel confident. The second conclusion is, it must be me.
Okay.
It must be me. There's something wrong or deficient, or I'm not good enough. And that's the dirty little secret, as I call it. So that's the second thing they do. They turn doubt into self-doubt. And I took them through. And that's probably the phrase that will cause the most, not breakdown, that's not the word I'm wanting, but perhaps the most release of tension in that session is I'll say, watching you're pretty good. Your histories, I think, are thorough. Your examinations are thorough. Your understanding and articulation of differentials is pretty good. Perhaps it could be a little better. It could be a little sharper. Maybe we could get those on the tip of your tongue a little better. Maybe your conceptualization or offering of strategies could be a little bit sharper, but it's not bad. So actually, on the main, for me, my assessment for you is you're doing okay. You're doing okay. And they kind of look at me, and then I pause and I say, but you know what the trouble is? There's only one person in this room doesn't believe that, and it's not me. And that's the phrase that they
Yeah.
start releasing, and they go, I have never felt confident. Actually, probably some of them go and tell me a whole life story of a lack of self confidence.
Yeah.